This is episode 115.
Welcome to Wellness in Every Season, the podcast where we explore the rich tapestry of wellness in all of its forms. I'm your host, Autumn Carter, a certified life coach turned wellness coach, as well as a certified parenting coach dedicated to empowering others to rediscover their identity in their current season of life. My goal is to help you thrive both as an individual and as a parent.
Today I have with me Rebecca Taylor. She is an author and a coach. If you see the poster behind her, her book is called Mind Training. Her business name is Progressive Awareness. Like I said, her book is Mind Training, the Science of Self-Empowerment. And because we really focus on the 8 dimensions of wellness, we're going to be talking about psychological, emotional, spiritual, and financial. Welcome to the show. Can you start off by just telling us more about you?
Hi, Autumn. Thanks so much for having me on your show. I've always been fascinated by the mind and why we do, but it's more the practical approach that's been my focus for the last 30, 40 years now, is how can we take this information? Having theoretical information about how the mind works is one thing, but can we use that information to actually improve our lives? And through all the research I've done, there are loads of places where we can do exactly that, where we can take scientific information and actually apply it in very simple ways. It doesn't have to be difficult. And that to me is my passion. It's about how can we become the best versions of ourselves? What are the things that encroach upon our abilities there? What prevents us from achieving what we know inside us that we are capable of? We all have that feeling that we haven't quite achieved our best. And then the other thing that I have learned too is that there isn't really, it's a journey, because what happens is you have certain issues in your life, you fix those issues, and then you discover something else. And it's not that you've just got lots of different problems, it's the fact that you're reaching higher. You're reaching a higher point. You want to do more. And that's the journey that I'm on. And that's the journey I try to share with everyone I talk to.
I was listening to a podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts while I work out and fold laundry. So I can't even tell you which one it was, but we'll go with they because I don't remember the gender person who said it. They were saying that there's so many businesses that feel like they have so much to do because once they learn this one thing, then they're learning the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So they never feel like they've really accomplished or achieved. And I really resonated with that because I've been feeling the same way. And that happens with self-development as well. So I love the way that you said that because it is absolutely a journey. We don't arrive, so to speak. We arrive at our next goal or pit stop, and then we can turn around and help the other person while we're still achieving our next goal or the next thing that the universe, like God, is telling us this is the next thing you need to work on. My way of really knowing the next thing I need to work on is what is my current trial? Is it different than other ones? Yeah, okay. I have a new one now, a new thing that I'm working on. So I love that you like to nerd out about the mind as well. And it sounds like you've had a bit of a journey and maybe a bit of a background in this that has led you here.
It has all been an experience. Life is a journey. Where my journey actually began was my degrees in microbiology. I was working in a path lab. I was very much, very science based. If science couldn't prove it, it wasn't real. I wasn't interested in the airy fairy stuff. But then one day there was a lecturer that came to the hospital, and there were flyers put all around the hospital talking about this special presentation that was going to happen on hypnotherapy. And up until that point, I had put hypnosis in that category of entertainment. Someone gets on stage, tries to make an idiot out of certain members of the audience. It was all done for humor. I did not take it seriously, but I found the presentation fascinating. It was particularly interesting because in my lab, there were about 70 people that worked there, and most of them attended this presentation. But it was for all the hospital staff, and it was a huge auditorium, and people from my lab were sitting all over the place. And then just coincidentally, when he asked for subjects to demonstrate different aspects too, he just happened to choose people from my lab. So I knew for a fact that they were not shills. They were not planted. This was not, some huge act. So I knew the process was definitely real, but he shared a story that fascinated me because he was talking about a woman who had a pain in her arm. She'd had the pain in her arm for about 10 years. She had seen all the doctors, all the specialists, all the physiotherapy. She had tried everything, and the pain in the arm remained. So, as a last resort, she went to see this hypnotherapist who was actually an anesthesiologist during the day practicing hypnotherapy. Yeah. So, he had a solid scientific background too. But as a final resort, she went to see him, and under hypnosis, she remembered an event that had happened in her past. It wasn't something that she had necessarily forgotten about. It wasn't something that was at the top of her mind. She remembered it being traumatic at the time, but it was in the past. And so when he brought her out of hypnosis, she didn't think that there was anything significant there. But the following day, she called him up to say the pain in her arm had gone. The pain in her arm had gone immediately, but she just didn't believe it. So there was some emotional event that she had dismissed, but the subconscious mind was still holding on to in some way. We don't know what the emotional event was, why she had a pain in her arm as a result of it. Was her subconscious mind punishing her for something? Was her subconscious mind trying to make sure she always remembered not to repeat that particular mistake? The subconscious mind works in really strange ways. But the interesting part to me was the power of the subconscious mind. And so from that point onwards, I went to see a hypnotherapist myself, experienced lots of different techniques, different uncovering techniques, things like automatic writing, automatic drawing. It was fascinating. He was take me back to different significant events in my life. And then he would say, okay, draw a picture of it. Say that was one example. And I just found it really interesting. So he had me do this particular drawing. And at the end of the session, I opened my eyes and looked at this drawing, and it was just squiggles on the page, just squiggles. It's like, what does that mean? But the following week, under hypnosis, he had me look at the same drawing and discover what the meaning was. And it turned out there was an event when I was at school. We had a swimming pool. This was elementary school. So I would have been 8, 9 years old. But in the summer, they would take us swimming in this little pool. And it was an above ground pool and it wasn't very deep. So the kids are in the pool and the teachers are just walking around the outside of the pool. And there was at one point where for some reason, and to this day, I don't know why, but I couldn't get my footing. My feet were just constantly slipping under me. So my head was underwater and I couldn't find my footing. And teacher saw that I was in difficulty. So literally just reached in, pulled me by my hat, my swimming cap, and pulled me up, terrified me. But I didn't tell anybody about it. And now this picture, this drawing of all these lines and squiggles with a pattern my feet made on the floor of the swimming pool. I found all of that fascinating. So I went on and I did a 3-year course in hypnosis and psychotherapy. I attended additional lectures, just like you're into podcasts. I was into, just gathering information. And I came ac Eldon Taylor he's my husband now, but he was teaching and he was offering a special course. And once again, he's talking about the power of the mind and how we learn information subliminally, how we intake lots of information. And I found it fascinating. I carried on studying. The two of us got married, and I just carried on researching it and finding the practical applications for it. The subconscious mind to me is absolutely fascinating. It has far reaching effects in our lives, but we have the ability to change that programming. And that's what mind training is all about.
I could tell when you first were speaking that you had a degree of some sort of that's what I was trying to go about. In true geek or nerd, whichever word you go for, fashion, you're like, I'm going to dig in even deeper and take more classes and get another degree in this. I love that. I love people who are like that. Probably because, first of all, I married a geek. And then I realized I have my own geek side and went back to school and not as far as you've gotten, but that's amazing. So, where is this marriage between science and you said fairy? I call it woo woo. I'm used to it being heard. You called it fairy something else. Where
Very
does that
fairies.
marriage happen for you?
Very cautiously. You see, back then I had dismissed hypnosis only to discover that it was very valid. And there are lots of places where I have thought something was woo woo. Reiki. When I first heard about Reiki, I went to like a mind body expo thing. I hadn't encountered this at all. And there's this presenter talking about Reiki. And basically, it was something like, well, for £50, because this is in England, for £50, we can do a Reiki treatment for you. For £75, we can teach you how to do it. And I thought that just sounded like such a con. They were just waving their hands over and whatever. I have since learned that there is value in Reiki. There are places that teach it. I have explored my own spirituality. I keep the spiritual generally separate from my scientific work, but it's having an openness to ideas that may be off the reservation, but maybe are worth pursuing more. So I'm very cautious about it. I look at it, I will test it out on myself. I will do some more research into it because there is a lot of woo woo out there. There are lots of people who can take a kernel of truth and expand it into something that is just weird and fantastic and absolutely ridiculous. Some of the claims they make. So my focus is always very much on where is that kernel of truth? I don't want to be so science minded that I close my mind off to anything new. I'm going to pay attention to it, but then I'm going to check it out for myself. So let me give you one example. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Emoto's work and crystals in water. For a while, it was really big in the New Age arenas. He's written lots of books about it. Basically, what he said was he took photographs under a special microscope of how crystals form in water based on the energy.
Oh, I have heard
And
of
the
that.
energy, yeah. So if the energy is of love, then it forms beautiful crystals. And if the energy is of fear and anger, then horrible crystals. And the pictures were wonderful. The pictures were wonderful. They were absolutely captivating. We wanted to believe it. And if you think about it, water in spiritual systems is very significant. It's everywhere out there. Every religious system out there is going to have their version of holy water of some kind, the waters of consciousness, all of that. So it was really appealing. And so, I read all the books, a degree in microbiology. I know how to use a microscope. I don't have this great walk in refrigerator, freezer, but where I am, I'm in Spokane. In winter, it can get to be -20. So it's almost embarrassing to admit that I had to test it out. I took my table and my microscope out there. I created my slides. I'm outside, outdoors, 20 degrees below zero. And I'm looking down the microscope at water and I can't see anything because you can't focus on crystals that quickly. It doesn't work. The technique doesn't work. So then I started doing my further research into it. I looked at how crystals form, how snowflakes form, and I discovered that there are certain places in the world where they don't form snowflakes. Maybe it's to do with the pollution, maybe it's something. There are just certain areas where they don't form. But I also learned that a, a degree, a tiny fraction of a degree change will alter the kinds of crystals that you get, whether you get the pretty snowflakes or you get the cylindrical crystals. And I realized then that there was something fishy about this information. What he was saying did not ring true. Now, IONS, that's the Institute of Noetic Science. There's a scientist there who tried to replicate the work of Emoto. And his research design was tight. I got his paper from him. I looked at it. It was, you know, the person taking the pictures of it did not have any idea which samples were which. It was pretty tight. It was done really well. And they took pictures, and their pictures reminded me more of a Rorschach test, the splodge on a piece of paper, and you have to try and, well, what type of picture do you see in that splodge? There was nothing. There weren't any snowflakes. There weren't any pretty crystals. Dean Braden, that's the doctor who was doing this research. And he sent me over the pictures. So I was looking at these pictures, and he shared them online and asked people to say which ones they thought were more aesthetically pleasing. And it happened to be the one that he said had positive energy put into it. But that was so inadequate. It was so inadequate. It was a Rorschach test. It was a splodge on a piece of paper, and you could have replicated this numerous times and had the results go different way. You was just asking people what was more aesthetically pleasing. So that's an example where I followed it, but then I did my research. I wanted to believe it. We have our biases. We have things that we wish were true. That one to me is not. So that's
How
what I
great.
did.
For people who are
Yeah.
wondering, how do I do this in my own life? How do I find out if it's true? This is super helpful. So, what about if we aren't as scientific as you? We don't have the microscope and the background. And what about for the average person?
In that particular instance, I went online and learned about how snowflakes form, and that was where I discovered just a tiny fraction of a degree difference is going to change it. There are lots of things that don't get replicated. That's the other thing that I look for. I look for replication. I look for publication in peer-reviewed journals. Don't say that that's going to be 100%, but that's going to give you a great deal more comfort is when there are peer-reviewed journals and replications, and the people running the research have got credentials. That all makes it help. I think if something is really valid, you will find replications. It maybe won't happen immediately, but in time it will. And if you think about Modo's work, that's disappeared now. I don't know anyone who is talking about that. The other thing that I found during, well, actually, it was a trigger for me for actually writing mind training was a research study I came across where they showed that a certain meditation had these great benefits on cognitive abilities. It was actually reversing to a degree some dementia. Alzheimer's patients were benefiting from it. And it was a 12-minute meditation, and it was all over the place. And when I was told about it, things went click, click, click in my brain. Lots of people hear of it as Satar Nama. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But it's a 12-minute meditation where you repeat Satanama out loud for 2 minutes, then you whisper it for 2 minutes, you say it silently for 2 minutes, and then you whisper it, then you say it silently for 4 minutes, then you say it quietly for 2 minutes, and then you say it loud for another 2 minutes. It comes with specific instructions. So you repeat the meditation to yourself, but you have to kind of sing it to yourself. So they say use the first four notes, and Mary had a little lamb. And I dug into this research even more, and I discovered that there were even more claims made to it. Now, the reason this got to me so much is I'm Indian, in case you can't tell. I was brought up in England, but my upbringing was very Indian. I was brought up Sikh. And in the Sikh faith, there is a phrase that everybody knows, Satnam. And Satanama sounded like Satnam, which means true name or God is truth. It's the second word in the holy book for the Sikhs. It's Ikungad Satnam. So when there's something that basic, you hear it even when it's pronounced badly. So I went and checked, and yes, that is where it came from. And there were claims in there that said that it was to do with acupressure points in your mouth, with where your tongue is for each of the different syllables. The syllables have changed. The way the tongue hits the mouth is different for all of it. So I knew that part of it wasn't true. The explanation wasn't true, but the meditation worked. And that got me wanting to dig more and more into all of these things. It's like, what is the truth about it? When you understand how the meditation works, you think about pacing, you think about hypnosis with if you're familiar with the techniques or not, we've all heard that the hypnotherapist who talks in a slow voice and they start to count you down. And that's part of the relaxation program and progressive relaxation. These are all, even if you don't understand it all, you will have heard hypnotists on TV doing precisely that. Well, the meditation for Sata Nama is a 4/4 beat and it's repeated slowly. And when you do that, your breathing rate naturally relaxes, slows down, your heart rate slows down, brainwave activity slows down, and it brings you into a more relaxed state. So that when you have that understanding, it's okay. The Satanama is a meditation. It's incorporating aspects of hypnosis there. They also use certain finger positions. So with Sa, you touch your thumb to your forefinger and then you move through your fingers, Satanama, just counting it off. But that also gives you focus. Think about when you try to meditate. Lots of people, as soon as you tell someone to empty their mind, all that chatter starts. And you try to empty your mind. I'm not going to think about everything. And you think about, oh, my stomach's grumbling. I can hear the dog. You think about the stupidest things. It is really difficult to empty the mind. And the busy mind, brainwave activity, is faster. And when your brainwave activity is faster, it's harder for information to get in. It's harder for you to access deeper parts of yourself. So you want to get into that relaxed state. So it's when you are using the finger position, so that gives you something else to focus on. Repeating Sata Nama gives you something to focus on. Exactly. So they also have you picturing light energy coming in from the top of your head and then going out, and it's kind of circular. Well, they draw a triangle. I often think of it as circular. So I like to reach up. Now you can bring in your own spiritual traditions to this. So that again was an empowering part of understanding the process. You don't have to stick to Sartanama. It's not been tested on these others, but there's absolutely no reason why you can't bring your own faith into it. And there's a great deal of research that has been done on the power of faith. When you believe in a higher power, when that is your personal belief, that's not something you can manufacture. But when you believe in that, it's a bit like turning things over. Your whole system can relax. An example I like to give is, say you're a young child and you're hurt and you're in school and you're taken to the nurse. Think of the relief you have when your parents arrive. The nurse can be really nice, but it doesn't compare to your parents. It doesn't compare to going home. Well, that's what faith will do for you. When you believe in a higher something, you can bring that in too. By understanding the actual science behind the process of the Satanama meditation, you are empowered to make it your own. You can add in the elements that work better for you. You're not restricted by the power of the expert. The expert tells you do X, Y, Z. And if it doesn't work for you, then you're not doing it right. That's often the case. There's lots of new age coaching, life coaching, basically the law of attraction. Again, a kernel of truth. If you don't believe you're capable of doing something, achieving something, you're not going to try your best to achieve it. You automatically put a block in place. So these kernels of truth, there are kernels of truth it's proven, it's demonstrated, but you can make it more powerful when you understand it yourself. You can create a format that works for you. Lots of people are going to feel really dumb going Satanama, Satanama. It's not conducive to relaxing. But if you have your own faith, your own belief, your own goals, and you bring that in, then that's when you become truly empowered. And that's what mind training is all about. I look at all of these different areas and then I will take them apart. But it was this particular area of research that triggered me to say, hey, I can contribute something here because your explanations are wrong. Everyone's jumping on the bandwagon and you're missing the true information that is here. You can personalize it, you can make it your own, you can have something that works for you for your own lifestyle.
It's really cool. I'm very interested in this book. So you were also a life coach. Huh.
Yes.
Are you also teaching?
I teach some. I'm going to be doing more and more of it. Writing the book, everything went on sabbatical. So, yeah, I got the book finished and I'm going to get back to coaching. I talk to people all the time. We constantly have people calling in and asking for recommendations or how to deal with this or what the cause of a problem can be. So, I've been doing that for years now, but I'll be doing a whole lot more.
So what type of coaching do you do? Because life coaching, you could do anything within that. It sounds like you talk a lot about mind. Makes sense.
It's all about mind training. Mind training is basically the art of tweaking formerly subconscious processes to eliminate self destructive behaviors, which we all have somewhere, enhancing health and vitality, and supercharging success potential. An analogy that I like to use, you know how else today the engines often come covered up, so you don't have easy access to the engines anymore, very different to when I was growing up, but they have hot points. So they will show you exactly where to plug in if you need to jumpstart your car. There's a little thing, there's easy places to go in. And that's how I see mind training. It's about finding those places where you can access your subconscious mind, how you can make the changes so that they will support your goals. It's about understanding where self destructive behaviors come from so that you can go in and look at those areas. And I have discovered personally, the more you understand that the answers are within, the more you understand that if you question your subconscious mind, it will give you the answers. At first, the answers that pop up can sound ridiculous, but when you dig in there, the answers will appear. When you have an idea of where to look, for the root causes of these different issues. So there's lots of brain models that I use in mind training. One of the ones that there's two that I particularly like. There is one where it talks about the divided self. We've all heard of Freud and the id, ego, superego. So we have some idea of the divided self. Model that we like to use around here, it talks about the four selves. There is the actual self, which isn't really the actual self, because the actual self holds those deep private failures. There is that part of us that we're not going to share with other people because that's where the embarrassing stuff is. That's where our inadequacies are. So we call it the actual self, but it's also where our harshest critic can be. There's the ideal self that is so perfect that it can't be real. There's the ought to be self that is created by society. You should do this, you shouldn't do that. But when you stop and think about it, society is not always correct. There were lots of people then who didn't believe, there were lots of white people, who owned slaves, who would question it, but they wouldn't do so vocally. So society is not always right. You have to come to your own truth. You have to stop and think about these things a whole more. And then there is the desired self. The desired self is who we believe we can be. And that's what my life coaching is about who is it that you desire to be. You can choose the person you want to be. Lots of people think this is just how I was made. It's genetics, it's nature and nurture. But who I am is who I am, and that is fixed. And that isn't the case. Not the case at all. You can here's the person that you want to be. You can strive to be better. You can learn how your subconscious mind has been programmed so you can change it to support your goals. Self destructive patterns really come about by your subconscious trying to protect you from further hurt. So perhaps you were embarrassed as a child doing public speaking, and as an adult, you refused to do public speaking. And I relate to this one. There was a time There was no way I would do this kind of interview. No way at all. But it comes, there were, I mean, I did actually figure out where the elements were in my childhood that began, where my fear of public speaking came about. But if you have that strategy as a child, if you're embarrassed during public speaking, then the subconscious mind says, I want to protect you from that. So as an adult, you get an opportunity for a promotion, say, but the promotion means that you're in charge of people and you're going to have meetings and you've got to speak. And maybe you say, maybe I don't really want that promotion after all, you know, or you find some other ways to sabotage it. Even if you're not thinking about it consciously, you can sabotage it. It comes in relationships. We all know people who constantly get into bad relationships or have difficulty finding their right partner. And you can find these things back in the past too. There was some research I came across again. I found this fascinating. They looked at infants and the degree of bonding they had with their primary caregivers, their parents. And they could predict based on the degree of bonding of infants at 1.5 years of age, how bonded they were with their caregivers, to how many friends they would have in high school, how many relationships they would have, how successful they would be. So, yeah, you can't go back and change your infancy, but Eric Erickson talks about the 8 stages of development, and he goes through all of these different ages and what you're supposed to learn at those stages. And when you learn that inadequacies come from this particular time in my life, it gives you a place to look in order to uncover. And you can decide. Sometimes you want to look backwards and uncover the cause of a problem. And sometimes you just want to say, okay, whatever it was, it's in the past. I'm going to move forward. What can I do now? So perhaps I was always pessimistic. Who knows where it came from? Is it in my genes? Is it from some childhood experience? But I always expect the worst. But science shows repeatedly the advantages of being positive. So the more positive person is going to experience less heart disease. Even when there is a family history of heart disease, they are a third less likely to experience the heart issues. That was research out of Johns Hopkins. There was a longitudinal studies done on nurses, and what they found was the most optimistic women had like a 16% lower risk of dying from cancer, a 38% lower risk of dying from heart disease, 39% lower risk of stroke, and on it goes. So there's a great value to being optimistic. And as I said, you can go back and search in the past, or you can put strategies in place today to change it. So mindfulness is about paying attention to the thoughts that go through your mind. Now we're to the point where we understand those thoughts have far reaching ramifications. So you pay attention to, oh, I always fail at that. And you can stop and say, well, actually, I don't. If I think carefully, I don't always fail. There's lots of places I've had successes. You can do the gratitude practices. So at the end of every day, this is a great exercise for everybody to up their positivity, is to just write down what you're grateful for that day. Think about what went well for you in that day, what you're grateful for. I'm grateful right now that the sky's blue and the sun's out. I'm always happy when the sun's out. And there's biological reasons for that too. The sun is a great way to boost the happy brain chemicals. When you learn how to boost them naturally, you can make yourself happier just by participating in certain activities. So if you're feeling down, step outside, get some sun, think about the beauty that's out there. I'm an outdoors person. You don't have to go outdoors at all. I just find more of it outside. Feel that fresh air, appreciate it. Take a big, deep breath. That incorporates diaphragmatic breathing too. You take that deep breath. We hear of these things, they're often made fun of. So there's movies you see where this super positive person, normally they tend to be a bit older, no idea why, but They go outside, they thump themselves on the chest, they take a deep, invigorating breath, and it sounds silly. It's always a bit cartoonish, but there's a great deal of science behind all of that. It certainly helps. And again, mind training focuses on these little things. It's not about making huge changes in your life. It's about these small things that you can incorporate into your daily life to just make simple changes. And the more you do them, then it becomes a habit and then it becomes second nature to you.
So many of the studies you mentioned, I learned about too, and I'm not that far from Johns Hopkins. So yes, I know that study as well. And it makes me think about an airplane. All you need are a few degrees for that airplane to change its course because you think about it, it doesn't seem that far. And it's not that far if the airplane's going right here. But if it is going across the world or across the state line and you change it a few degrees, that's all it needs. And that is all you need in the trajectory of your life. Our brain is taking care of all of this stuff. Some of the things we're thinking about for it to take care of, some of the things it's not within our body to keep us functioning and living. And our mind is part of that, but it's part of our spirit too. There's such a connection there. And that's something that I've been really diving into and just enjoying for myself. But there is so much that we have so many thoughts going through our brain. There have been studies on this. I don't know how they came up with how many thoughts we have a day. Do you just like have a clicker each time you have a thought? Like, I don't even know. But anyway, it's the ones that we cherry pick that really, really matter, in my opinion. Are you going to pay attention to the positive thoughts? Like, oh, that's a good thought. I like that one. Give me more thoughts like that. The ones that we pay attention to are the ones that we are going to have that perpetuating cycle of, and then continue focusing on the positive thoughts and thoughts that you like. There very much is what I love about coaching because you get results faster oftentimes than therapy with coaching, which is something that I love. And you are very forward thinking, where therapy is very past thinking. And you can also heal your past through forward thinking, through coaching. Out of all my guests, I feel like you are the one that gave the most value in terms of all of the different things that you can start today to help yourself. Whether we pick up your book, whether we decide to have coaching with you, we still are better for listening to this episode. So thank you for that. But if you want more of her, there is mind training. If you are watching the video on YouTube, there's a cover of the book right behind her head. And we will have links to this. We'll have links to her website. And any of the other links that she is giving us will be in the show description. Thank you so much for being on. Do you want to leave us any last thought as we close out?
Thank you so much for having me on, Autumn. Remember, you have more power within you than you've ever believed. You have the ability to create the life of your choosing. And it starts today with the choices that you make. And the more you understand of yourself, the faster that journey will become. And it's not a case of having to do 100 different things. As you said, it changes the trajectory of your life. So you're on that shorter, faster route to get there. And all of that power lies within you.
Thank you. There's so many times right then and then right before where I just wanted to yawn and that like my body feels like it's relaxing. I just have any of you guys felt that where you're not tired, but you feel that need to yawn? This is what's going on. It's just your body's like, yes, that double breath, that yawn, that she is saying things that are resonating for me. I hope they are for you too, because I could nerd out with her for a while. But this stuff is so important. So please pay attention to it. Please share this episode with your friends. Thank you so much for being on. And I hope everybody, including you, have a fantastic week.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. I am your host, Autumn Carter, a certified life coach dedicated to empowering individuals to rediscover their identity, find balance amidst chaos, strengthen relationships, and pursue their dreams. My goal is to help people thrive in every aspect of their lives. I hope today's discussion inspired you and offered valuable insights. Stay engaged with our wellness community by signing up for my newsletter at wellnessinEverySeason.com/free resources. When you join, you'll have the option to receive a 5-day guide called Awaken and Unwind. 5 days to mastering your mornings and evenings, along with free guides, special offers on my programs, practical tips, personal stories, and much more, all related to wellness, by signing up for both offers on the page. Don't miss out on these valuable resources designed to help you thrive in every area of wellness. Join today and start your journey to wellness in every season. Your shares, subscriptions, and reviews help us reach more people seeking empowerment. So please spread the word about our podcast and about our newsletter. Thank you for being a part of our podcast community. I look forward to continuing our conversation, sharing stories, and exploring wellness in all of its aspects. Take care until our next episode. You can also work with me one-on-one or on demand through one of my programs by visiting wellnessineveryseason.com/programs. One last thing to cover the show legally, I am a certified life coach giving general advice. So think of this more as a self-help book. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not a licensed therapist, so this podcast shouldn't be taken as a replacement for professional guidance from a doctor or therapist. If you want personal one-on-one coaching from a certified life and parenting coach, go to my website, wellnessineveryseason.com. That's where you can get personalized coaching from me for you. See you in next week's episode.